was St. Augustine that said, pride turned angels into devils. Today we're going to be talking about servant leadership. And the trappings of servant leadership. It's been, as I've known you for quite a long time, my whole life, one of your main ministries and one of your key ministries as you've ministered to people has been to teach on the whole sphere of servant leadership. You have a master's degree in leadership and management organization. And so you've done this approach in secular environments, you've done it in religious environments, in church environments. When I say, or someone says the word to you, servant leadership, how do you define that? What goes into your mind? What do you think of? How is that shaped in your paradigm?
Yeah. Well, it's been profoundly impacted by Jesus and the way he modeled leadership. And I don't think people understand it well enough. I think people subscribe to servant leadership in the church in the way they subscribe to prayer.
Philosophically,
but don't do it.
Yeah.
And so I've spent a long time thinking about this and asking myself, what is the fundamental difference, and why did Jesus choose to be that way? And I think it's because of this. All of society is structured around hierarchies and power differentials. So you have the general, you have the soldier, you have the teacher, you have the student, you have the doctor, you have the patient, you have the government, you have the people. There's these power inequalities, and those in leadership have power, real power. And Jesus comes along and he inverts the whole thing. He says, I'm among you as one who serves. In other words, well, let me say it like this. When you walk into a restaurant and see an A-list actor, everyone wants a selfie. Everyone wants to say hello. Everyone derives some sense of value just by being in proximity. Nobody walks into a restaurant and wants a selfie with the waiter.
Yeah, or the busboy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The waiter to them is almost inconsequential. And Jesus says, I'm basically the waiter. And I think what Jesus is doing is he's removing the power differentials. Even when people call him rabbi, he's not the way other rabbis are. And so true servant leadership is an ability for me to have genuine spiritual authority, but not position yourself over people, but to approach them on their level or under them. And that gives people a tremendous sense of safety and security. And I think it's this removal of the power inequalities that Jesus says is why that kind of leadership is so impacting and so effective. We allow people to discern what we carry rather than telling them what we carry. So like Elisha, the story on Sunday, Elisha comes along and the woman, the widow, she's not a widow, sorry, the woman says, the Shunammite, I know this is a holy man of God. She discerns it. He doesn't introduce himself as a prophet or anything. He's just going by and having meals. And she says there's something different about this guy. And I think Jesus is the same. He comes along, and so all the authority you see Jesus exercising is spiritual authority. And spiritual authority has power to heal, power over demons, power to speak to the heart of individuals from a place of equality, if you like. And Jesus is not posturing himself. So even with his disciples in Matthew 16, he says, okay, so who do people say I am? No, he's not posturing himself.
Right.
And then when Peter finally gets it, he says, flesh and blood didn't reveal that to you. You didn't get that from anybody telling you. I certainly didn't tell you.
Right. Yeah. Because everybody wants to tell you their title, their position, their hierarchy within a structural.
I walk into pastors' offices all the time and I see a whole row of certification. They love it. And it's like, okay, what are you trying to tell me?
Yeah.
Big deal,
Yeah, yeah. They put it on there, well, not for their benefit.
On the one hand,
Sure.
I don't care. I'm not, listen, if you've got certificates on the wall, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just asking the question, where does your sense of security lie? Where does your sense of authority lie? Does it lie in position? And I think we've had too much positional authority in the church. Too many hierarchies rather than genuine servant leadership where we are approachable. We've developed something in the church called the green room, where a pastor can go, after a message and be on his own, as it were, or prepared. And I'm okay with a green room as long as, well, I quite like a green room if I'm doing a conference, because you're doing 2 or 3 messages, maybe 4 even, and you need a bit of thinking time and a bit of praying time and everything. But on a Sunday service, do you really need a green room on a Sunday? Aren't you there to engage with people? And so I make myself available. I'm usually the last person to leave the church on a Sunday. So church service will finish, our second service, around about 1 o'clock. I don't normally leave till 2. I'm talking to new people, I'm praying for people, I'm engaged, I'm fully present. To me, that's servant leadership. But, sometimes I see pastors and it feels a little elitist. It feels like, you're a little bit inaccessible.
Yeah. There's definitely a sense of keeping people sort of at arm's length. There's a safety there, mechanism that sort of kicks in because it protects my sphere of influence and it keeps sort of a mystique around who I am and my authority.
And Jesus is in public arenas all the time.
Yeah, but he also retreats.
He does in order to refresh and renew.
Right.
But just look at his lifestyle. He got up a great while before dawn, He gets up early. He spends that time and then he has a day.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's around people. Most people would say, okay, well, sure, servant leadership in a ministry setting, but this, maybe the pushback would be, but this doesn't work in a secular setting. Like if I was to be the servant leader, how do I be a servant leader in a secular environment without just becoming a doormat for every ambitious person, who's going to walk all over me? I read Robert Greene's book, The 48 Powers of Law, and I disagreed with 80% of it. and I thought, this is brilliant. It's all brilliant and well researched, and don't get me wrong, Robert Greene is a brilliant thinker. And if I was a secular thinker, I would agree with 100% of it. Like the first point is never outshine your leader. Never do that. And of course you immediately think of David and Saul, for example. Totally. So it's never outshine, always make them look good. And of course we want to do that, but it's diminish yourself. And so that I understand that in a secular environment that there's a sort of you're playing the game in order to get ahead. And that's what you would do if in a secular world. That I could understand that thinking. Why would servant leadership work in secular environments? Have you experienced them working and does it?
Yeah, I have. It's interesting you say Robert Greene wrote that book, because there's another Robert Greenleaf, who wrote the book Servant Leadership back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Which I think everyone should read. And Robert Greenleaf's book became seminal in influenced Stephen Covey,
Oh, yeah. Actually,
who wrote Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Right.
And Stephen Covey was one of the first people after Greenleaf to talk about servant leadership. Pete Seng then wrote The Fifth Discipline. All these guys, and we're talking now in the 90s, really.
Right. And Simon Sinek as well, more recently.
Yes, and so it came on the table, and people were thinking about it because they realized there was a disconnect between management and workers. And that's where for over 100 years you had unions, and there was this fight for rights, and there was this sort of elitism within management, and there was this protectionist mentality within unions. We have to fight for our rights. We have to fight for what we want. And I think people began to see this is not a great model. This is a contentious model. It's a combative model. I've seen servant leadership work. I worked for 3 years for a management development company where we were training people to start their own businesses and training small to medium-sized enterprises to grow their businesses. And so within the very framework I was operating in, I was using a servant leadership approach in the way I led the team. And
which must have been pretty new for them.
It was really new, and people loved it because I would say things like, hey, you're free. I don't mind you attacking ideas. We will attack ideas. We will not attack people. In other words, if ideas are robust, they can stand being stress tested. So you're allowed to bring anything on the table. If you think whatever practice we're doing, if you discern a better way of doing it, bring it to the table. You won't be laughed down. You won't be criticized. And I won't think you're criticizing me by bringing that to the table. And so I tried to create a culture where better ways of doing things could be brought to the table rather than feeling threatened that the way I've initiated it is now going to change. And that's where servant leadership, your identity is, you don't equate your identity with an idea. An idea is an idea. You can challenge an idea without necessarily challenging a person, without challenging their character or their integrity or their motivation. You just say, I think there's a better way of doing this. So I tried to cultivate that within the team that I was leading. And I actually trusted people. And until people did something that was either highly incompetent or was a bad mistake, then for me, it was a conversation. Do you realize what's happened here? Do you realize what you've done? And most people are intelligent enough to say, yeah, I'm not going to make that mistake again. It's like, okay, let's move on then. Whereas if people are blind and they say, I have no idea, what do you mean? It's like, okay, we've got a problem now. Maybe I need to retrain this person or reposition this person. And that's where you are exercising leadership, but you're doing it in a sort of a compassionate way to say, well, they're not handling this particular role or responsibility that well at present.
Right.
So perhaps I need to retrain or reposition.
Do you think servant leadership works well in environments of high pressure or high urgency? Because I think the default is to straight away go to positional leadership. When you need something done, I don't want a discussion. I don't need compassion. I need it done. You know what I mean? Like, how does that play out in environments where there's high stress, high stakes?
Yeah. For me, that's all about what do you agree beforehand. So let's take an ER.
Right.
That's a high stress environment.
Yeah.
So if I was approaching that as a servant leader, I would be sitting down with the team and say, hey team, when we get somebody in with this condition and we have to act fast, I'm going to need to be able to call shots that in the environment you can't challenge. It's too costly, it's too time consuming, and we're dealing with life and death. We'll have a debrief later,
Yeah.
and we'll evaluate. And
So you give room for people to approach, people to question, attack ideas, whatever, but not right there.
Yeah, and you set that up as the ground rules. You set that up beforehand. In this situation, I'm going to call the shot. Or if you're away and you delegate, you say, in this situation, I'm trusting them to call the shots. I just need you guys to support until it's over. And so for me, it's how you set up the framework but people know that there's an opportunity to then evaluate.
Yeah. So talk more about the kind of language that servant leaders tend to have as opposed to positional leaders. I want to help people maybe self-evaluate their language and their style, because they may not even be necessarily thinking. And so what are the kinds of things that positional leaders tend to say?
Yeah.
And what are the kinds of things that you notice that this is what comes out of a servant leader's mouth?
Yeah. So positional leaders tend to say things like this. This is what I want done, and this is how I want it done. And this is when I want it done. And it's usually highly directive and highly specific. Servant leaders tend to say things like this. This is where I want to end up. How do you think we should get there? So one of the things that I'll often say when I'm talking to the team that I'm leading is, hey, the destination is not negotiable. How we get there and how fast we get there is. Tell me what you think. And so I define what's not negotiable and then leave everything open for debate.
And that, of course, invites collaboration, a sense of responsibility, shared ideas.
Innovation, creativity.
Yeah.
All those things you're inviting. So servant leaders tend to ask more questions than give answers. So people say, when people come to me and say, oh, we've got this problem, what do you think we should do? I usually say, well, what do you think we should do? Because I want to see, have they thought through the problem?
Or are they just coming to you to look for direction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they might have a better idea than me.
Yeah. And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it takes some humility, but also security in yourself.
If you're secure in yourself, you're giving leadership by helping them develop to reach their maximum potential. And you're creating that environment. And that's real leadership. Actually, for me, real leadership is the environment you create that people can flourish in.
Yeah.
It's not about telling people what to do. That's simple delegation.
Right. And yeah.
It's about creating an environment.
Yeah. Do you think people start out with good intentions and the temptation is the more accolades they get, the more experience they get, the higher they move up, the more they just, I can do this quicker, I can do this faster.
So here's a weird phenomena that I've observed. And I've seen it over and over again. When appointing leaders in the church, let's call them elders for the sake of argument. I've seen somebody function really well as an elder without the title. In other words, they're really great with people. They're really great at leading. And then I've seen them, once they get the title, change. Just become a complete idiot. And they say, well, now I've got this responsibility. I have to act this way. I say, no, you were given the responsibility because of the way you acted before you had the title.
Right.
Don't change. Continue the way you were.
Right.
It's just that now we're giving you some kind of recognition of something you were always doing. And I've seen that over and over again. People suddenly get a title and think they're meant to act differently without really thinking through, no, I got this because of the way I was. I don't need to change. I just need to mature more and understand more. But
right.
I don't fundamentally need to change the way I'm making decisions and handling people.
Right. And I'm assuming they typically become more authoritarian.
Totally.
Less collaborative and,
more challenging.
Right. Yeah. Chip on their shoulder.
Yeah. It's like, why are you being so argumentative? You were never like this before. Well, now I have a responsibility. It's like, jeez.
So there's always a temptation there.
Yeah, I
but when it comes to influence, but there's a temptation for people as well to want to gain influence and to gain authority. And how do you fight that constant temptation? Like, what do you do? Practical things, or how do you help young leaders navigate? You've been given this sphere of influence and authority, and it's growing. How do you remain a servant?
So whenever there's success and achievement, I always try and defer to the team that's around me.
In terms of giving credibility?
Credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, credit. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, I'll defer, hey, you grew this church from this to this in this period of time. Yeah. I surrounded myself with brilliant people. I think, and I genuinely mean it, actually.
Yeah, and you do that publicly.
I do that publicly.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm good at spotting talent. And so I do surround myself with great people. And I'm letting them flourish. And I've got their back so that when they stuff up, I will defend them. I remember, you know who I'm talking about, but for the sake of public display, I won't say their name, but he was a young leader in the church I was leading, and he was organizing a youth camp. And we had about 30 kids in our youth group at that time. And he booked a camp for 100. And I said, don't you think that's a bit ambitious? And he goes, no, I'm really believing God we're going to get 100. I go, okay.
So you're caught in a position between not wanting to squash his faith, but also having experience and knowing the numbers.
Yeah. And it was going to cost £2,000. And I think he had a £5,000 a year budget, and he was going to blow $2,000 on this. And
right.
I said, okay, And the closer it got to it, the more he realized he's not going to achieve this. I think he got 40.
Okay, yeah, he's 40% success rate.
He said, "I've signed this contract for $2,000. I'm going to have to pay $2,000, and I've only got 40." And I said, "You've learned to pay from the lesson, haven't you?" And he was mortified.
Yeah,
and I was okay with it. And then one of the elders came to me and said, "Have you heard what's happened with this booking?" And I said, "Yeah, I have heard." He said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" I said, "Well, we've talked about it, and it's fine." He goes, "Well, no, you need to put checks and balances in place so this never happens again." And I said, "I am absolutely not going to do that." And he said, "Well, why not?" And I said, "Because I know that will send a message to him that I don't trust him, and I'm not doing it."
That's so good.
I would rather lose $2,000 knowing that he's learned a painful lesson than try and put some system in place that substitutes trust.
Oh, that's so good. I was listening to Craig Rochelle the other day, and he was saying that policies in companies are hangovers from mistakes. And at the time, they're there to make sure the mistake doesn't happen again. But over time, what you get is so much red tape to cut through and so many policies that no one can do anything without any level of trust. Yeah. I'm paraphrasing what he's saying here.
Yeah. We've substituted policies for discernment.
Right.
And so we're trusting in a system now. And I say to people, we were reading it last night in Philippians chapter 1. Paul says, I pray that your love would abound in all knowledge and discernment. And I think discernment, Jesus, you'll read over and over again in the Gospels, it says Jesus perceived the thought of their heart.
Yeah.
Discernment is like an incredible weapon for a leader. To be able to read what's really going on rather than a policy, have you done this? Have you ticked this box? Have you filled out this form? And I'm okay with policies, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying let's abandon all policies. But policies work for 85% of the algorithm.
Right. There's just nuances that it can't account for.
Yeah. And as long as policy is something that somebody can overrule through discernment and change in a particular context with a particular person in a particular situation, then I think they're fine. They deal with the general. They don't deal with the nuanced. And I think when it's applied without that temperance, without that ability to change, it becomes very constricting. And
yeah, it's great. So servant leadership in your mind, it always, when things go well, it gives credit to others, and when things go bad, it takes the hits.
Yes. Yeah.
And it says, no, that's on me.
Yeah. Yeah. And this elder had never heard anything like it. He said, that's risky, isn't it? And I said, yeah, it is.
Right.
I said, but I don't think he's going to do it again.
Right. And he didn't.
Yeah, and he didn't. And now he is leading a very successful church in his 30s with over 500 people, and
he's crushing it.
He's crushing it.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't crushed.
Yeah. So talk to me about character versus charisma when it comes to servant leadership.
Yeah.
Because the charisma is the thing that most congregants fall in love with, the thing on the stage. Everyone loves a charismatic speaker.
Yeah.
Somebody who can capture you and move you, and we need that.
Yes.
The body needs that. But maybe just talk about that imbalance or what you see needs work on.
Well, here's my observation. If you find a really good evangelical church, there's such a strong emphasis on character that they have boring preachers many times. There's such a lack of charisma.
So you can trust them, but you'll be asleep.
Exactly. And then you've got charismatic churches, and it's completely the opposite.
Right.
You'll find amazing speakers who'll make you laugh, make you cry, capture you, inspire you. And then you find out they've been having an affair for 7 years, or they're doing this.
Sure.
A lack of character. And so I think it's R.T. Kendall who said what we need is a marriage of word and spirit. And really he's talking about a marriage of character and charisma. And the truth is, when you're a young leader, you've got all kinds of character issues you're still working through. They're not disqualifications from leadership, I don't think.
Right.
But they are signs of immaturity, signs of selfish ambition from time to time, signs of insecurity from time to time. I don't think any of those things are disqualification from leadership if you're under a good coach and a good mentor and you're not set free to be that way. But somebody from time to time is just sitting you down and talking to you about that. And when it's becoming unhealthy. So for me, there was an old saint in my life from years ago called Johnny Barr. Johnny was a gypsy who got saved with a profound prophetic ministry. And he became a great friend of mine. And he's with the Lord now. And Johnny said this to me one time. He said, Peter, there's 3 things that will get you in ministry. It'll either be the girls, the glory, or the glitter. It'll be one of
and like a good preacher, they all started with G.
And it was like, money, sex, power, basically.
Sure.
He said, one of those 3 things is going to get you. Watch out for where your proclivity is.
Everyone has a weakness.
Everyone. And watch out for that and protect yourself. And then the other issue is, I think with this whole charisma character thing is, who are you allowing to shape you in both those arenas? Johnny went on to say this to me, Johnny Barr. He said, make sure that your gifting doesn't take you where your character can't keep you.
I've repeated that line to so many people.
Yeah.
One of the most helpful phrases I think I've memorized in life.
Yeah.
Unpack that more then for people.
Well, here's the thing about charisma, about gifting, is the gift and calling of God are irrevocable. So when you're born again, suddenly something awakens in you that's deeply rooted in the Spirit's gifting to you. So here's the difference between character. Character is like a tree that you plant that eventually bears fruit. And every fruit tree takes a minimum of 3 years. Minimum. Some fruit trees take 6 to 7 years. Mm-hmm. Whereas a Christmas tree, all the gifts are under the Christmas tree. The tree didn't produce the gifts. Mm. They're just there. And if you think of your life like that, whatever gifting you have is like the Christmas tree. It's there to unwrap.
Right. Someone else put it there. The tree didn't produce it.
Yeah. But character is produced by the tree. It's the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, all those things. And so that's hard work, I think. Now, shaping your gift is also work, but in a different sense. It's work from the point of view of training and development and opportunity.
Right.
But both have to grow together. And I think the character has to lead.
Yeah, because the temptation is always going to be to train. Gifting is easy. The temptation is always going to be spend time in your gifting, because gifting is fun. You're usually good at it. Yeah. It sets you apart. It's what gets you accolades and attention. And so, of course, if you're great at guitar, you're going to want to pick up guitar and get better at it. And that's fun, but working on character is less enjoyable.
Yeah, and sometimes we've promoted people on the basis of gifting without really digging deeper to see, well, where is their character formation and how are they working with spiritual formation in an ongoing way? So we've had worship leaders completely abandon the faith. Can you believe it? Like here they are leading the people of God into God's presence, and then they're having a major crisis.
Right.
And we've had spiritual leaders who've fallen one after the other. It's embarrassing. And it's like, well, the question I want to sit down and ask them was, who did you give permission to speak into your life?
Yeah.
Because clearly you were either not listening to them or you had no one.
Right. And their gifting just continued to take them into realms and spheres where their character couldn't sustain.
Yeah.
Couldn't sustain them. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So, servant leadership, what do you want people to know about? Well, let me put it this way. What's the antithesis of servant leadership? It's positional, but what are the character antithesis? Like, what is it you see that stops people from really entering in? Is it just pride, arrogance? The
difficulty is if you don't use a servant leadership model, you will tend to default to where you feel your strength lies, or to cover your insecurity. So I've met a lot of leaders who are really successful, but I find them quite narcissistic. They really think it's about them and tend to use people. And they're so goal-orientated that as long as somebody's serving that purpose, they're in favor.
Right.
And so it tends to be more selfish, traits of ambition, traits of pride, traits of narcissism.
Right.
Not feeling secure when they're challenged in any way. To me, all of that is so unhealthy.
So on the flip side, what are traits that make someone safe to follow?
Well,
you talk a lot about seeking mentorship,
yeah,
and which we need more of? So what should people be looking out for when
So I actually wrote a book about this.
Mm-hmm. I'm aware.
Called The Soft and Hard Sides of Leadership, How
Yeah.
to Avoid Being a Wimp or a Megalomaniac.
Yeah.
And I kept it really simple because I've read so many leadership books that I find make leadership complicated. They're great authors and they're great books, but it's exhausting. It's exhausting reading a book on Christian leadership today in terms of what you have to do. So I could be criticized for being too reductionist, perhaps, maybe. But I reduced the soft side of leadership down to 3 things and the hard side of leadership down to 3 things. The soft side was about compassion, which I think was the main driver of Jesus' ministry. Contrition, which is a form of humility before God. To whom will I look in Isaiah 66? To him who's of a contrite spirit and trembles at my word. And then connection, which is all about my ability to actually be fully present with a person, whatever they're telling me, whatever they're experiencing in life. So compassion is what drives me. Contrition is what keeps me. And connection is what makes me effective in terms of that soft side of leadership. Now, the hard side of leadership is more to do with vision and goal and purpose. And that requires courage. Courage in the face of opposition. And it requires conviction in the face of multiple opinions and ideas. And it requires clarity in the face of confusion. Mm-hmm. So to me, these things have to be working together as a composite. And when they're working together, it means I'll know when I need to be soft, which is mainly with people, and when I need to be hard, which is mainly with purpose. So Jesus could turn around to Peter and say, "Get behind me, Satan. You are an offense to me." He knew what was really going on in what Peter was articulating.
Yeah.
And that, it seems really harsh. I sort of imagine breakfast the following morning where all the disciples are going, "Can you pass me the marmalade, Satan?" Peter's not going to he's not going to live that down, is he, for at least a week?
He might be his favorite, but he never called me Satan, Peter.
Exactly. And so you've got this, you've got this dynamic where Jesus knew when to be soft and he knew when to be hard. And I think mentoring and coaching in those realms, I used to be a very, very task-orientated leader in my 20s and early 30s. And then by the time I was reaching my late 40s, I took the same test. And actually, instead of my task gifting diminishing, my people orientation increased. And they became almost equal.
Right.
So I knew where I needed to work. I knew where I needed to do the homework. And I think you get, today when we say someone's very pastoral, what we tend to mean is they're very people orientated.
Right.
I think it's a bit of a misnomer, really.
Yeah. Or even compassionate and, the soft side is what we're saying.
Yeah. David writes, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall lack nothing." And then his first statement he makes is, "He leads me."
Right.
So true pastoral ministry, I think, is a combination of those two sides working together.
Yes.
But since the Reformation, we've tended to privilege the soft side of leadership more.
Right.
And then in the last 50 to 100 years, we've recognized apostolic prophetic ministry more, which tends to be more task-orientated, more vision-orientated, the hard side more.
And it protects vision, protects vulnerable.
Yeah.
Well, I think of like Luke 17 when Jesus says, if any of you causes these little ones to stumble, better to have a millstone tied around your neck and be chucked out. I mean, that's consequential. That's an observation about reality. And it's, that's hard language.
it's really hard, and it's a warning about how you choose to relate to people. And so whenever people are basically cannon fodder, you're just using them, I think you're on a dangerous road. I think you need to watch your heart when you've got to that place. And I think people don't realize that there are Absaloms out there.
Yeah.
Who want power.
Right.
And know the only way to get it is to attack the weakness of what they see in the current structure they're part of. And they endorse people's offense. You're right to feel that way. You're right to feel that. They should have dealt with you. And I understand how you feel.
Yeah.
And if I was in charge, things would be very different around here. And the Bible talks about how he stole the hearts. True leadership wins hearts. Poor leadership steals hearts. You take it from someone else. You undermine allegiance. You undermine loyalty through an agenda.
Right. And of course, in doing so, you only set up a system that will eventually undermine yourself, because that's what you've developed.
Yeah.
You get into really toxic cultures in church.
And you can see that, like in the story of Absalom, there was a lot of vanity there, like
his hair is mentioned, and
yeah. And that's eventually what got him caught, by the way.
Sure. It's a great picture, isn't it? That's what he cared about, and that's what ultimately took him down.
Yeah.
Whether that is a picture of vanity or, literally happened like that, both work superbly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant writing. Brilliant writing. Well, we're drawing the end here. I mean, there's a few more questions, but I'm looking down the list here. But let's finish on this note. How does humility shape the way that someone leads others? How does humility, getting it low, how does it shape the way that you have led people? Because you, in your own words, you've softened over the years. You were. Well, I'll let you finish there, but you've changed your style over the years, and with age has come some humility.
Yeah.
Same in my life. 39, the age is approaching.
Yeah. I think humility. Well, C.S. Lewis said it like this: humility is not thinking less of yourself; it's thinking of yourself less.
Mm-hmm.
I rather like that.
Yeah.
But if I was to sort of unpack that a little bit more, I would say humility is being prepared to put yourself in the shoes of the person that you want to serve and you want to help, and seeing the issues they face through the lens that they have, not your lens. And I think that brings understanding, and it brings a compassion. It's interesting. The writer to Hebrews talks about Jesus, who is called a faithful high priest. And it says he's not somebody who cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmity. He was in all points tempted like we are, but without sin. So Jesus intimately understands the stress, the angst, the insecurity, the fear. He intimately understands what we face. That's the starting point of our intercessor. So for me, humility is that willingness to see life through the lens of somebody else, and then understanding where they're coming from, to then speak to that and not make a set of assumptions about where they are and what they're experiencing, but listening to the story. You see that in Elisha with the woman who comes, whose son has died. The woman is in great distress, and the Lord is hidden from me. what this is. In other words, I've got to be fully present right now.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to hear her story.
Right. God's not giving me any cheat codes here. I've got to engage.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, that's genuine humility.
Yeah.
So they're the things that I've tried to work with over the years. Stop making assumptions about what you think people are going through and what you think is going on. Stop putting labels on people without truly understanding first. I think when I was younger, I was too quick to look at behavior and label it without understanding motivation, without understanding, well, what's really going on at a deeper level here.
Mm.
And so I think another thing about humility is, I forget which American president it was who said this. I think it might have been Roosevelt or Truman, but one of them said, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit.
Yeah.
And I've observed in my own life that sometimes people have got credit for something I did. I mean, I was the main person who set it up, and they got the credit.
And they were happy to take it.
Yeah. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, it's a great phrase.
Yeah.
Till it touches you.
Yeah. Well, hold on. I helped out here.
Yeah. And there was part of me that just wanted to go, excuse me. And I thought to myself, you know, how important is this? Yeah, I'll let it go.
Yeah.
But it did challenge me. It did do something. It helped me recognize there's still something in me that just, you know, likes the spotlight.
Drawn to it like a moth to a flame. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no, well, that's great. I think that's a great discussion on servant leadership. And I think, you know, one of the key takeaways is just understanding that servant comes before leadership.
Yeah.
In servant leadership.
Yeah.
And leadership is primarily defined as how well you serve people. You know, all leadership is a service to people.
Yeah.
Or to mission or to purpose. And
I mean, the word that's ubiquitous in the New Testament is diakonia, servant.
Yeah.
And even Jesus is called a deacon.
A deacon, yeah, that's where we get the word deacon from.
Yeah.
A servant.
And so, you know, we tend, like I said, the tendency is always to create hierarchies. I think as I read the New Testament, they kept the church as flat as possible. Paul talks about bishops and deacons. That's about it.
Right, yeah, yeah.
That's very flat.
Yeah, yeah. And even in our church structures now, we've got these org charts, and it's just...
I know.
And there's nothing wrong with flow and structure and organization. All that kind of stuff is helpful when delegating responsibility. But there is a sense of pride and position that comes with all of that just is so tempting. It's just the juicy fruit for all of us that we want to bite at.
Yeah. And I think there's going to be a great shake-up going to be happening in the next 10 years. I think we're going to see Bible colleges close down. Bible colleges that are charging $45,000 a year to train. Who's going to pay that? Who's going to do that for 3 years? You know, I think Jordan Peterson's academy, where he's like $300 a year.
Yeah, online.
And he's got all the best professors from Ivy League universities and said to them, teach for 8 hours on your favorite subject and nobody's going to censor you. It's like, that's a genius move. What would happen if we did that in the kingdom? What would happen if we got the best theologians from the best universities and somebody put an academy together and said, we want to teach for 8 to 12 hours on your favorite subject, and we'll pay you. But then you made it available and did it more online and everything.
Yeah.
I think the whole training and development of future leaders is going to shift dramatically. And a lot of these institutions that were good for their time.
Right.
I think they've outlived their purpose.
Yeah, they've become so inaccessible to so many people, which is the antithesis of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and they've become very institutionalized. Now
Right.
it's about preserving the institution, keeping it alive.
Yeah, we've got to charge more to keep the institution alive.
Rather than adapting. So I think that's,
Got to find a new way to serve. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my point.
Right. Right.
Let's find a new way to serve and to create future leaders
Yeah.
and maximize it, not limit it because of
Right.
finance.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. As always, we're going to go have some lunch. But thank you for tuning in. And, if you can click that like button, that really helps us out. Share it with a friend. Share this podcast around. Put it on your socials. But if you don't do that, that's okay. We still love you and you still have a place here. So I pray that you have a blessed day and this has in some way enriched your life. God bless. Take care.